Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yesterday was an important and a difficult day, a long day for Dr. Ford, for Judge Kavanaugh, for the Senate Judiciary Committee, for our nation. And I will say briefly at the outset that before yesterday began, I prayed. I prayed for Dr. Ford and her family. I prayed for Judge Kavanaugh. I prayed for our chairman and ranking member. I prayed for our president. I prayed for all who would watch yesterday, who were victims of sexual assault. And I prayed for all who would watch yesterday, uncertain whether we could conduct ourselves respectfully. And I must say, after everything I have heard, I am struck that in the Twitter-fueled smash-mouth politics of our day, we must ask ourselves, what about our conduct? What about our conduct here would encourage anyone to come forward with credible allegations of sexual assault, to seek a nomination to a federal court or other position of trust, or to serve here? And as a result, I tonight will pray for our nation. The burden on this committee was to address, investigate, and resolve reasonable doubts as to credible allegations against the nominee before that. And by that test, this committee has failed. I know we have heard strong words about many of our colleagues. And my predecessor, long-serving senator and former chairman of this committee, Joe Biden, has been quoted by many, and I would say misquoted at times. But I want to share one quote, one thing he said to me when I began my service here, which was, "It is always appropriate to question another senator's policies. It is always appropriate to question another senator's priorities, but it is never appropriate to question another senator's motives." And there has been far too much of that that's happened in this process, in a way that, frankly, will make it very difficult for us to take off our partisan jerseys and at some point get back to the important work of finding solutions to the real challenges facing this country. What I have been searching for in this process is the facts. And I recognize many of my colleagues on the other side do not see it that way. Many of you have questioned the timing of when this allegation surfaced, and you have also said there are not enough facts corroborating Dr. Ford's testimony to ruin a good man. I strongly disagree with both of these points and want to explain briefly why. The first time I learned of Dr. Ford's allegations that Judge Kavanaugh had sexually assaulted her was on September 12th. Ranking Member Feinstein disclosed this highly sensitive information to myself and other Democrats on this committee only after reporters had learned of the letter Dr. Ford had provided her Congresswoman. I don't know how this information leaked. I regret that it did. The decision whether to come forward should have been Dr. Ford's and Dr. Ford's alone. And I cannot rule out that the person who leaked this information had a partisan agenda. But I am certain Ranking Member Feinstein and her staff did not disclose Dr. Ford's account prior to that date because it was not theirs to share. And I think it's regrettable that long-serving, honorable colleagues of hers have questioned her motives. I know since the day that my Democratic colleagues and I learned of these allegations, we've had one consistent request: to allow the FBI to investigate them in a nonpartisan, professional, even-handed manner and deliver their findings to us so that we could reach a conclusion. That same night, Ranking Member Feinstein sent a letter requesting such an investigation. To suggest that Senate staff interviews or letters from lawyers are an adequate substitute for a robust FBI fact-gathering process that we might then weigh is not credible and reflects, sadly, a willful blindness to the dysfunction of our institution. To my colleagues across the aisle, you know me. You know I try to be fair to nominees that come before us, and I respect this process and the humanity of those, even those with whom I passionately disagree. If I were convinced this were nothing more than a partisan hit job designed to take down a good man and hold a position vacant past the election, I would not stand for it. An investigation would be helpful because Dr. Ford's recollection shared with us so powerfully yesterday of her assault were searing but incomplete. Dr. Ford testified credibly about painful memories she's carried with her to this day. The feeling of a hand clasped over her mouth and her not being able to breathe.
We'll never get to it.
the sound of laughter while she was pinned on a bed, the weight of a body on top of hers groping her, and the feeling of relief fleeing the house. Dr. Ford testified with 100% certainty that the person who assaulted her was Brett Kavanaugh, whom she knew through multiple acquaintances and had socialized with on multiple occasions. But it is true, as has been widely repeated, that Dr. Ford cannot pinpoint the date or the time of the assault, the exact location, and that she did not tell anyone about that assault at that time. There is not an eyewitness who has been able to provide the details of this, all of which is typical of sexual assault. Many experts have written how common it is for assault survivors to remember some facts with searing clarity, but not others, which has to do with the survival mode that turns on when we experience trauma. The vast majority of sexual assault victims delay disclosing what happened to them or never disclose it at all. One of the most striking things about this hearing for me has been the so far five personal friends, acquaintances, people I've known for years or decades who've conveyed to me their experiences of sexual assault on this phone while this testimony was going on. That suggests that there is an ocean of pain in this nation, not yet fully heard, not yet fully addressed, not yet appropriately resolved. And I, for one, will not countenance the refrain said by too many in response to these allegations by Dr. Ford that it happened too long ago and that in our nation, boys will be boys. We must do better than that, and we must set a better standard than that for our own families and for our future. I worry sincerely about the message we are sending to assault survivors if we plow ahead with this nomination, despite the seriousness of the allegations. And I have conveyed to my friends and colleagues that I had wished we would take a 1-week pause, 1 week only, not to spread this out past the next election, not to pursue some partisan goal, but to allow a professional FBI interview with everyone who may have relevant information, starting, yes, with Mark Judge, who obviously, given the vote of this committee this morning, will not be subpoenaed to appear before us. I'll remind you briefly that many of those who came forward to support Judge Kavanaugh, including my own professor from Yale Law School, Akhil Amar, and an organization I've long belonged to, the American Bar Association, have spoken up to also request a thorough and professional background investigation. I think to ask for a week is not to ask for too much. When Professor Anita Hill came forward, the White House cooperated, and in 4 days, a hearing was put together with 22 witnesses. I think that's what Dr. Ford deserves. I think that's what her bravery deserves, and I think that's what our nation deserves. I will not go through a long point-by-point refutation of what we've just heard from some of my colleagues, but let me simply say a few things about Dr. Ford's testimony. As I've said, she bore the pain of this attack alone for far too long, but her memories did not stay hers alone. Dr. Ford told her now husband in 2002. She told therapists in 2012 and 2013. She told friends in 2013, 2016, 2017, 2018, and has submitted testimony about all of that to this committee. Dr. Ford, when she came forward yesterday, had nothing to gain and a lot to lose. She came forward to testify about her experience of assault, and I'm going to use her words. She said, "I'm here today not because I want to be. I am terrified. I'm here because I believe it is my civic duty to tell you what happened to me while Brett Kavanaugh and I were in high school." Civic duty, to tell the truth. What has always struck me is that Dr. Ford came forward to voice concerns about Judge Kavanaugh before he was nominated. She reached out to her congresswoman anonymously, to the Washington Post tip line as well, when Judge Kavanaugh's name was on the president's short list. She was not lying in wait for an opportune time to make a big reveal to sink a nominee. Rather, she had wanted this information to get to the president before he made his selection so the president could pick someone else. I wish he had. Judge Kavanaugh yesterday unequivocally denied the allegations against him. But something he said repeatedly, importantly, was not accurate. Over and over again, he testified, and we've just heard it repeated here today, that Dr. Ford's account was refuted by 3 individuals Dr. Ford identified as being present. That's not the case, and Judge Kavanaugh knows it. Not recalling is not the same as refuting. Their statements issued through lawyers say they don't remember the gathering. Of course, none of these three people were assaulted that night. For two of them, it would have been an unremarkable evening, just another casual summer among friends. And Leland Kaiser says that she believes Dr. Ford's account, a fact not acknowledged by my colleagues or Judge Kavanaugh. I'll also say that in my view, the failure of this committee to subpoena Mark Judge, whom Dr. Ford identified as a witness and participant in her attack, is a failure in this committee's effort to get to the truth. We also have to face the reality. There are additional serious allegations brought in sworn statements by Ms. Ramirez and Ms. Swetnick, who have both asked for an FBI investigation into their claims. Their claims have varying credibility, but deserve to be heard. I wish Judge Kavanaugh would have pointedly supported a short pause for an FBI investigation for the benefit of clearing his own name. But I'll say, as I conclude, there is something much greater in my mind at stake. The fact that Judge Kavanaugh is nominated to the Supreme Court means this is not just about his credibility and the remaining concerns about his credibility that I will carry forward. It's about the court's legitimacy. We're left with the reality that if his nomination goes forward this morning, after testimony full of rage and partisanship and vitriol, but without even a brief pause for a nonpartisan investigation into the serious allegations presented, his service may well have an asterisk. Litigants coming to the court will have reason to question the fairness of the institution. And in my view, that is too great a cost to impose on our system of justice in exchange for any one man. It is my hope that my colleagues, those who have not yet decided or declared their decision, will still join in a request to allow the FBI to do its important work and for this committee to allow itself the time to get to the bottom of the remaining allegations. Given the vote this morning, I know that is highly unlikely. I initially announced my opposition to Judge Kavanaugh after our previous round of hearings had concluded. Those hearings began without a declared position by many of my colleagues on this side. In the end, for me, it was Judge Kavanaugh's extreme views on presidential power that I engaged with him vigorously on, and that I believe I engaged with him respectfully on, that determined my vote on him. But for us to proceed today without giving the thoughtful, serious, and thorough investigation of credible allegations before us is for this committee to fail to do its job. I pray that after today, we may yet find a way to work together because our community, our country, and our world deserves no less. Thank you.